Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel New Dawn, watching the stars through the main viewport. They had been traveling through space for 6 months now, mapping new worlds and searching for signs of life. The mission was supposed to be routine, but Jake had learned that nothing in space was ever truly routine. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," said Lisa Park, the communications officer. She was young, barely 25, but she had the best ears in the fleet. If there was a signal out there, Lisa would find it. Jake walked over to her station. The bridge was quiet, except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Most of the crew was sleeping since it was night shift. Only the essential crew remained awake to watch over the ship as it moved through the darkness between stars. "What kind of signal?" Jake asked, looking at the screens filled with numbers and wave patterns that meant nothing to him but everything. To Lisa, "It's weak, but it's definitely artificial." "Not from nature," Lisa said, adjusting her headphones. "It's coming from the Kepler 442 system, about 3 days away at our current speed." Jake frowned. The Kepler 442 system was not on their mission plan. They were supposed to continue to the outer rim worlds, not stop at every interesting signal they found. But something about Lisa's expression made him pause. "Play it," he said. Lisa pressed the button, and a strange sound filled the bridge. It was not like any human communication Jake had ever heard. It was high-pitched, almost musical, but there was something sad about it, something desperate. "How long has it been broadcasting?" Jake asked. "Hard to tell. Could be days, could be weeks. The signal is getting weaker, though. Whatever is sending it might not have much power left." Jake called for Dr. Amy Collins, the ship's xenobiologist, to come to the bridge. Amy was the expert on alien life forms, though they had never actually found any before. She arrived within minutes, still wearing her lab coat and looking curious. "Listen to this," Jake said, and Lisa played the signal again. Amy closed her eyes and listened carefully. She was a small woman with gray hair, but her mind was sharp as a knife. After the signal ended, she was quiet for a long moment. "It's not random," she finally said. "There's a pattern. It repeats every 47 seconds, but with small changes each time, like ... like someone is trying different ways to say the same thing." "What kind of thing?" Jake asked. "If I had to guess." "A distress call, but not from adults. The frequency and pitch suggest it might be from young beings. Children, maybe." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Children calling for help across the darkness of space. He thought about his own daughter back on Earth, safe in her bed, and imagined her voice calling out with no one to answer. "Ben, get up here." Jake called to Chief Engineer Ben Torres over the comm system. Ben arrived on the bridge still pulling on his uniform shirt. He was a big man with steady hands and a practical mind. When Jake explained the situation, Ben shook his head. "Captain, we're not a rescue ship. We don't have the equipment or supplies for that kind of mission. And we're already 3 months behind schedule." "I know what we are," Jake said firmly. "But we might be the only ship in this part of space. If there are children in trouble out there, we have to help." Lisa had been working on the signal while they talked. "Captain, I've been running the signal through our translation programs. It's not perfect, but I think I'm getting some words. Help is the clearest one. But there's another word that keeps coming up. The computer thinks it might mean young ones or children." Amy nodded. "That matches what I thought. The vocal patterns are definitely from juvenile beings." Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. These were good people, the kind who had joined the exploration service to make a difference in the universe. He could see in their faces that they were thinking the same thing he was. "We need to put it to a vote," Jake said. "This affects everyone on the ship. If we go to investigate, we could be delayed for weeks or months. Some of you have families waiting at home." Within an hour, the entire crew of 43 people had gathered in the main cargo bay. Jake explained the situation and played the signal for everyone to hear. The strange, sad music filled the large space. And Jake watched the faces of his crew as they listened. When the signal ended, there was silence for a moment. Then Sam Walsh, one of the youngest crew members, raised his hand. "Captain, I joined this mission to explore and discover new things." "Well, this is about as new as it gets." "I vote we go." One by one, other crew members spoke up. Nicole Adams, the security chief, said her job was to protect people, and that included alien children if they needed help. Kate Miller, the medical officer, said her oath was to heal and help no matter what species needed it. Not everyone was happy about the decision. Some crew members worried about their families back home, about the risks of approaching an unknown alien world. But when the vote was counted, it was unanimous. All 43 crew members voted to change course and investigate the signal. "All right then," Jake said. "Lisa, send a message back to Earth Command. Tell them we're investigating a possible first contact situation. Ben, I need you to prepare the ship for extended operations. We don't know what we're going to find out." There, as the crew scattered to their duties, Jake remained in the cargo bay for a moment. Through the small windows, he could see the stars wheeling slowly as the ship changed course. Somewhere out there in the darkness, unknown beings were calling for help. Jake thought about his daughter again, about her bedtime stories where brave heroes always came to save the day. He had always told her those were just stories, that the real world was more complicated than fairy tales. But maybe, just maybe, sometimes the real world gave you a chance to be the hero in someone else's story. The New Dawn turned toward the Kepler 442 system, carrying 43 humans toward their first contact with alien life. None of them knew that this decision would change not just their lives, but the future of humanity itself. All they knew was that somewhere in the darkness, children were calling for help, and they were going to answer that call. 3 days later, the New Dawn entered the Kepler 442 system. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching as the main screen showed their destination growing larger. The planet was beautiful, covered in green and blue with white clouds swirling across its surface. It looked almost like Earth, but something felt wrong. "The signal is much stronger now," Lisa Park reported from her station. "It's coming from the largest continent in what looks like a forest region." Dr. Amy Collins studied the readings from her science station. "Captain, I'm detecting massive structures on the surface. They look like cities, but they're built in the trees. Some of these trees are enormous, over 1,000 feet tall." Jake nodded. "Any signs of technology? Ships, weapons, communication arrays?" "That's the strange part," Amy said, frowning at her screens. "I can see the cities, but I'm not detecting much active technology. No power grids, no manufacturing centers. It's like the cities are there, but nobody's using them." Ben Torres looked up from the engineering station. "Captain, I'm reading some kind of atmospheric disturbance. Not dangerous to us, but it might explain why their technology seems inactive." Jake made his decision. "Prepare the shuttle. I want a small team to go down and investigate. Nicole, you're with me for security. Amy, we need you to study whatever we find. Lisa, bring your translation equipment." Nicole Adams checked her sidearm. An equipment pack. She was tall and strong, with the kind of calm confidence that made everyone feel safer. "Captain, we don't know what we're walking into down there. The signal could be a trap." "I know," Jake said. "But if it's really children calling for help, we can't just leave them." An hour later, their shuttle broke through the planet's atmosphere. The forest below was unlike anything they had ever seen. The trees were massive, their trunks wide enough to hold entire buildings. And they did hold buildings. As they flew closer, they could see structures built into and around the enormous trees, connected by bridges and platforms hundreds of feet above the ground. "There," Lisa said, pointing to a cluster of particularly large trees. "The signal is strongest from that group." Jake piloted the shuttle to a landing platform that jutted out from one of the giant trees. As they sat down, They could see that the platform was beautifully made, carved from the living wood of the tree itself. But it was empty. No one came to greet them. The four humans stepped out of their shuttle, breathing masks covering their faces until Amy could confirm the air was safe. The platform was large enough to hold several aircraft, but theirs was the only one there. Everything was quiet, except for the sound of wind through the enormous leaves above them. Air is breathable, Amy announced after checking her instruments. Similar to Earth, maybe a bit more oxygen. They removed their masks and walked toward a large archway carved into the tree trunk. The architecture was beautiful, all flowing curves and natural lines. But as they entered the tree city, they began to understand why everything was so quiet. Bodies lay everywhere, Dot. They were not human bodies, but they were clearly the remains of intelligent beings. The creatures had been tall and thin, with long arms and delicate features. Their skin was covered in what looked like soft feathers or fur, colored in beautiful patterns of gold and green, but they were all dead. "Captain," Nicole said quietly, her hand on her weapon, "we need to be careful. Whatever killed these people might still be here." Amy knelt beside one of the bodies, studying it carefully. "I don't think this was violence," she said. "Look at how they're positioned. They look like they just laid down and died. And see these marks on their skin? This looks like some kind of disease." As they moved deeper into the tree city, they found more bodies. All adults, all dead from what appeared to be the same illness. The buildings were clearly homes, with furniture sized for the tall, thin beings. There were pictures on the walls showing families, and Jake could see that the creatures had lived in groups with adults and children together. But there were no children among the dead. "Listen," Lisa said suddenly, holding up her hand for silence.in. The distance. They could hear sounds. Not the distress signal they had been tracking, but something else. Crying. Soft, sad voices calling out in the alien language. They followed the sounds deeper into the tree city, climbing spiral ramps that led to higher levels. The crying grew louder as they climbed. Finally, they reached a large chamber filled with what looked like nests or bed size for small beings. And there they were. The children, Dot, there were dozens of them, maybe more than 100. They were small versions of the adult aliens, covered in fluffy, colorful gown instead of the sleek feathers of the adults. They looked weak and hungry, huddled together in small groups. When they saw the humans, some cried louder while others just stared with large, dark eyes. "Oh my God," Amy whispered. "They're just babies. Look how small they are." One of the young aliens, braver than the others, approached the humans slowly. It was about the size of a human child, maybe 4 or 5 years old. Its down was a soft blue-green color, and its large eyes looked up at Jake with a mixture of fear and hope. The little creature opened its mouth and made a sound. Not the musical distress call they had heard from space, but something simpler. A single word that Lisa's translation device immediately recognized. "Help," the device said in a mechanical voice. Jake knelt down so he was at the same level as the small alien. "We're here to help," he said gently. "We heard your call." The translation device worked both ways, turning Jake's words into sounds the alien could understand. The little creature's eyes grew wider, and it turned to call to the others in its own language. Soon, Jake and his team were surrounded by dozens of small aliens, all chattering excitedly. Lisa's device was working overtime, translating fragments of their speech. "Hungry," it said. "Scared. Parents gone. Help us. Please help us." Amy was studying the young aliens with her medical scanner. "Captain, these children are in bad shape. They're malnourished and dehydrated. Whatever killed the adults, it didn't affect the young ones, but they can't take care of themselves. How long have they been alone?" Jake asked Amy use her scanner to examine some of the adult bodies in nearby chambers. "Based on decomposition, I'd say the adults have been dead for at least 2 weeks. These children have been surviving on their own all this time." Lisa was working with her translation program, trying to understand more of what the children were saying. "Captain, I'm getting more words now. They keep saying something that translates to tree mothers and sky fathers. I think those were their parents. And they're asking when the adults are coming back. Jake felt his heart break a little. These children didn't understand that their parents were never coming back. They had been waiting, growing weaker and more frightened each day, calling out to the stars for someone to help them. We need to get back to the ship, Jake said. We need supplies, medical equipment, and food. These children won't survive much longer without help. Nicole was already on her radio, calling the new dawn. This is the landing party. We need emergency supplies for approximately 100 alien children. Medical priority. As they prepared to leave, the little blue-green alien who had first approached them grabbed Jake's hand with its own small, delicate fingers. It looked up at him and said something that made Lisa's translator pause for a moment before responding. Don't leave us alone again, the device finally said. Jake squeezed the small hand gently. We won't, he promised. We're going to get help, and then we're coming back. You won't be alone anymore. As they walked back to their shuttle, Jake's mind was racing. They had found alien life, but not in the way anyone had expected. Instead of advanced beings with technology and weapons, they had found orphan children who needed basic care and protection. Behind them, the children watched from the platforms and windows of the Tree City, their large eyes following the humans. As they left, Jake knew that everything had changed. His mission of exploration had become something much more important. It had become a rescue mission. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the cargo bay of the New Dawn, watching his crew work with desperate efficiency. They had been back on the ship for only 2 hours, but already the entire vessel had transformed into a rescue operation. Boxes of emergency food, medical supplies, and equipment were being loaded on the shuttles as fast as the crew could move them. Dr. Amy Collins rushed past, carrying a case of medical scanners. She had barely slept since returning from the planet, spending every moment studying the biological samples they had collected from the dead adults and the living children. Amy, report, Jake called as she hurried by. She stopped and turned, her face showing both exhaustion and excitement. Captain, I've figured out what killed the adults. It's a virus, but it only affects beings over a certain age. Like chicken pox on Earth, but in reverse. The children can't catch it because their immune systems are different. What about us? Are we at risk? No. The virus is completely species-specific. It can't jump to humans. But, Captain, that's not the important part. Amy set down her case and pulled out a tablet showing complex biological data. These children aren't just hungry and scared. They're dying. Jake felt his stomach drop. What do you mean? The adult. Aliens weren't just parents. They were biologically necessary for the children's survival. Look at this. Amy showed him images from her medical scans. The children produce a hormone, but they need a chemical response from adults to process it properly. Without adults around, their bodies can't function correctly. How long do they have? Maybe 2 weeks. 3 at most. Their bodies are already starting to shut down from the lack of adult biochemical signals. Jake stared at the data, trying to understand what Amy was telling him. So we can't just feed them and keep them warm. They need adult aliens to survive. That's what I thought at first, but I've been running tests. Amy's voice got more excited. Captain, human biochemistry is different enough that we might be able to substitute for the missing adult signals. It won't be perfect, but it might keep them alive. What would that require? Constant contact. The children would need to be around humans almost all the time. Physical contact, actually. The chemical exchange happens through touch and close proximity. Jake understood immediately. The crew would essentially have to adopt over 100 alien children, caring for them 24 hours a day. He thought about his own crew, good people who had signed up for exploration, not childcare. There's something else, Amy continued. I found 3 adults who are still alive. Barely, but alive. They're in the final stages of the disease. We're going to learn how to properly care for the children. We need to talk to them now. An hour later, Jake was back on the planet with Amy and Lisa. They had brought medical equipment and translators, hoping to communicate with the dying adults before it was too late. They found the 3 survivors in a building near the center of the Tree City. They were weak, barely able to lift their heads, but their large eyes still showed intelligence and awareness. When they saw the humans approaching with supplies for the children, something like relief crossed their faces. Lisa set up her translation equipment while Amy began medical scans. The strongest of the 3 adults, an elderly female with golden feathers, struggled to speak ... you ... came. The translator rendered her weak voice. The little ones called to the stars ... you came. We're here to help, Jake said, kneeling beside her. But we need to know how to care for them. What do they need? The dying alien's eyes focused on Jake with effort. Over the next hour, she and the other 2 survivors used their remaining strength to teach the humans everything they could about caring for their children. They showed them how to prepare the special foods the young ones needed, how to recognize signs of illness, and how to comfort them when they were afraid. Most importantly, they taught Jake and his team the traditional songs that the adults sang to calm frightened children. The melodies were complex and beautiful, full of rising and falling notes that seemed to speak directly to something deep in the heart. The songs ... Very important, the elderly female explained, her voice growing weaker. Children know they are safe ... when they hear the songs. Sing to them. When they are scared. As the day wore on, the 3 adults grew weaker. But even as they faced death, they used every moment to help the humans understand their children's needs. They described the personality of individual children, which ones were shy, which ones were brave, which ones had special talents or needs. Blue-green child, who spoke to you first, the elder said. Her name is ... Kiara. She is leader among the young ones. The others will follow ... if she trusts you. What does her name mean? Lisa asked. The dying alien managed a weak smile. Little song. She has the most beautiful voice. When she grows up, she will be a singer for our people. Jake felt a chill. Would Kiara ever grow up? Would any of these children survive to become adults? As evening approached, the 3 adult aliens were clearly dying. But before they passed, they had one final request. Promise us, the elder whispered, her voice barely audible. Promise you will not let them forget who they are. Teach them our songs, our stories ... our ways. They are the last ... of our people. Jake took the frail, feathered hand in his own. I promise. We'll keep them safe, and we'll help them remember. The elder alien smiled one last time. Thank you ... star friends, our children. We'll leave. All 3 adults died that night, peaceful and quiet. Knowing their children were no longer alone, Jake stood in the empty chambers where the last adults had passed away, feeling the weight of the promise he had made. Over 100 alien children were depending on humans they had never seen before. His crew would need to become parents, teachers, and guardians to an entire species. He activated his communicator. Jake to New Dawn. Ben, I need you to send a message to Earth Command immediately. What should I tell them, Captain? Jake looked out through the Tree City's windows at the stars above. Somewhere out there was Earth, with billions of humans going about their daily lives. They had no idea that their species had just become guardians to the last children of an alien race. Tell them we're going to need supplies for an extended mission. A lot of supplies. Food, medical equipment, construction materials. Enough to care for over 100 beings for years probably. Captain, that's going to cost millions, maybe billions. Earth Command will never approve that kind of expense for aliens they've never met. Then tell them this too, Ben. Tell them that humanity just got its first chance to prove we're worthy of the stars. We found children calling for help across the darkness of space, and we answered. Now we get to show the universe who we really are. Jake paused, thinking about little Kiara and all the other children waiting in the Tree City. They were scared and alone, but they had trusted humans enough to ask for help. That trust was not something Jake was willing to break. And Ben? Tell Earth Command that Captain Jake Morrison and the crew of the New Dawn are staying here, with or without support. These children are our responsibility now. As Jake ended the communication, he could hear sounds from deeper in the Tree City. His crew had arrived with the first load of supplies and were already working to set up temporary care facilities. He could hear human voices mixing with the soft chirps and calls of alien children. Somewhere in that mix of sounds, he heard singing. Someone was attempting one of the traditional songs the dying adults had taught them. It wasn't perfect, but it was close enough. The children were responding, their own voices joining in with the familiar melody. Jake smiled as he walked toward the sound. They had a long road ahead of them, caring for over 100 alien children with no idea if help would come from Earth. But for the first time since arriving at this world, Jake felt something like hope. The children were singing, and they were no longer alone. 3 months had passed since the crew of the New Dawn first heard the alien children's call for help. What had started as an exploration mission had become something no one could have imagined. The beautiful Tree City had been transformed into a bustling sanctuary where humans and alien children lived together as an unlikely family. Captain Jake Morrison walked through the main nursery chamber, watching his crew at work. The scene would have seemed impossible just months earlier. Nicole Adams, the tough security chief, sat cross-legged on the floor with 5 small alien children clustered around her. She was reading them a story from Earth, her voice gentle as she turned the pages of a picture book about brave knights and dragons. And then the knight said to the dragon, Nicole read, "We don't have to fight. We can be friends instead." The children listened with wide, dark eyes, their soft down fluffed up with excitement. One of them, a little one with silver blue coloring, raised a delicate hand. "Nicole, mother," the child said in careful English. "Do dragons really exist on Earth, home?" Nicole smiled. Over the past months, the children had started calling their human caregivers by titles that mixed human names with family words from their own language. Jake had become Jake Father to many of them, while Dr. Amy Collins was Amy Healer. Not dragons like in the story, Nicole explained, but Earth has many amazing creatures. Someday, maybe you'll get to see them. Jake continued his daily rounds through the sanctuary. In the next chamber, he found Ben Torres working with a group of older children on an engineering project. The alien children had shown remarkable intelligence and curiosity about how things worked. Ben was teaching them to build simple machines using parts from the ship's workshops. "See, if you put the gear here," Ben explained to a young alien named Zephyr, "it will make the wheel turn faster." Zephyr's feathers were a beautiful mix of green and gold, and he had proven to be exceptionally good with mechanical things. His small hands moved carefully as he placed the gear exactly where Ben had shown him. "Like this, Ben, teacher?" Zephyr asked. "Perfect," Ben grinned. "You're getting really good at this." Jake felt a warm pride watching the scene. The children were not just surviving, they were thriving. They were learning human languages, human skills, and human values. But they were also teaching the humans about their own culture, their songs, their games, and their way of seeing the world. In the medical bay, Dr. Amy Collins was conducting her daily health checks on the children. The early weeks had been scary, with several children becoming dangerously ill before Amy figured out the right balance of human contact and alien nutrition. But now, most of the children were healthy and growing. "How are we doing today, Melody?" Amy asked a small child with purple-tinted down. "Good, Amy Healer," Melody replied, holding still as Amy used her medical scanner. "My stomach doesn't hurt anymore." "That's wonderful news," Amy said, making notes on her tablet. The children had needed time to adjust to human-prepared food, but Amy had worked with the ship's computer to create nutritious meals that the alien digestive systems could process. Jake's rounds brought him to the communication center, where Lisa Park was working with some of the older children on language lessons. The alien children had an amazing ability to learn new sounds and words. Within weeks, most of them could speak basic English, and some were becoming quite fluent. Today we're going to learn about Earth animals, Lisa announced to her small class. Can anyone tell me what sound a cow makes? A child named Echo raised her hand eagerly. Her feathers were bright yellow with red tips, and she had shown exceptional talent for mimicking sounds. Moo, she said, and then repeated in a perfect imitation of Lisa's voice. Very good, Echo, Lisa laughed. Now, what about a dog? Woof! Several children called out together, their voices mixing in a chorus of barks that made everyone giggle. But it wasn't all fun and games. Jake knew the challenges they faced were enormous. The ship's food supplies were running low, and they had received no response from Earth Command about sending help. Some of the crew were getting tired and stressed from the constant childcare. Duties. Everyone worked in shifts around the clock, but caring for over 100 children was exhausting work. Jake found Sam Walsh in the hydroponics bay, working to grow fresh food for the expanding sanctuary. Sam was only 22, one of the youngest crew members, but he had thrown himself into the work with incredible dedication. How are the crops coming along, Sam? Jake asked. Sam wiped sweat from his forehead and looked at the rows of growing plants. Better than expected, Captain. The alien children seem to have a natural understanding of plants. Some of them have been helping me, and they're teaching me techniques I never would have thought of. That's great news. We're going to need all the food we can grow. Sam's expression grew more serious. Captain, I've been thinking, what happens if Earth doesn't send help? We can't keep this up forever with just our supplies. It was a question that kept Jake awake at night. They had made the choice to save these children, but the reality of long-term care was becoming more difficult every day. The ship was not designed to be a permanent home for so many beings. Systems were wearing down, supplies were running low, and the crew was getting tired. That evening, Jake sat in his quarters reviewing supply reports when he heard soft singing coming from the corridor outside. He opened his door and found little Kiara, the blue-green child who had first spoken to him on the planet. She was walking slowly through the ship, singing one of her people's traditional lullabies. Other children appeared in doorways and corridors, drawn by her beautiful voice. Soon, dozens of alien children were gathered in the main corridor, all singing together in their own language. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, full of hope and sadness mixed together. Jake watched as several human crew members also stopped to listen. Kate Miller, the medical officer, had tears in her eyes. Ryan Cooper, the pilot, was humming along with the alien melody. Even Tuck Ben Torres looked moved by the children's song. When the song ended, Kiara approached Jake. She was still small, but she had grown noticeably in the months since they had found her. Her eyes were brighter, her voice stronger. Jake, father, she said, we sang the song of gratitude. In our old language, it means, thank you for keeping us safe when the darkness came. Jake knelt down to her level. You don't need to thank us, Kiara. We're family now. Yes, she agreed. But the song also asked the star spirits to help family. When times are hard, maybe the star spirits will hear us and send help. As if her words had been prophetic, Jake's communicator buzzed with an incoming message. Lisa's excited voice came through clearly. Captain Morrison to the bridge immediately. We're receiving a transmission from Earth Command. Jake hurried to the bridge, followed by several crew members and a few of the older children who had become curious about everything that happened on the ship. Lisa was already working to decode the message when he arrived. It's Admiral Henderson, Lisa announced. She says they've been reviewing our situation reports. Captain, they're sending help. The bridge erupted in cheers from both humans and aliens. Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. They weren't alone anymore. Earth had heard their call and was responding, but as he listened to the full message, Jake realized that the help coming from Earth would bring new challenges. Admiral Henderson was sending not just supplies, but also scientists, doctors, and officials who would want to study the alien children and make decisions about their future. Jake looked at Kiara and the other children who had gathered on the bridge. They trusted him and his crew completely. They had become a real family over these difficult months. Now strangers would be coming who might not understand the bonds that had formed between humans and aliens. The sanctuary they had built in the Tree City was about to face its biggest test yet. Jake only hoped that when the Earth ships arrived, the officials would see what he saw. Not alien specimens to be studied, but children who needed love, protection, and a chance to grow up in peace. Outside the ship's windows, the alien worlds. Twin moons were rising, casting silver light across the massive trees. Somewhere in those trees, over 100 alien children were sleeping safely, watched over by humans who had become their family. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, the children were safe, fed, and loved. That was enough for now. 1 year after first contact, the alien world had become something no one could have imagined. Where once there had been a single exploration ship, now a small fleet of Earth vessels orbited the planet. Admiral Grace Henderson stood on the observation deck of her flagship, looking down at the transformed tree cities below. "I have to admit, Morrison," Admiral Henderson said to Jake, who stood beside her, "when I first read your reports, I thought you had lost your mind. Adopting over 100 alien children seemed like the most reckless decision a starship captain could make." Jake smiled, watching shuttles move between the ships and the planet's surface. "And now I think it might be the most important thing humanity has ever done." The transformation had been remarkable. What started as an emergency rescue had become the foundation for humanity's first permanent colony on an alien world. The Tree Cities now house not just the original alien children and Jake's crew, but hundreds of volunteers from Earth who had come to help with the growing community down on the planet's surface. The changes were even more dramatic. Dr. Amy Collins walked through the expanded medical facility, checking on her patients. The alien children had grown significantly over the past year. Many were now the size of human teenagers, though their development was different from human growth. Patterns. "Good morning, Zephyr," Amy said to the young alien who had become Ben Torres' star engineering student. Zephyr was now almost as tall as Amy, his green and gold feathers having deepened into rich adult colors. "Good morning, Amy Healer," Zephyr replied in perfect English. "I wanted to show you something." Zephyr led Amy to a workbench where he had been building something with parts from both human technology and materials from the alien trees. It was a device unlike anything Amy had seen before, combining electronic circuits with what looked like living wood fibers. "What does it do?" Amy asked, fascinated. "It translates, but not just words," Zephyr explained excitedly. "It translates feelings and emotions too. When humans touch it while speaking, we can understand not just what you say, but how you feel. When you say it," Amy stared at the device in amazement. The alien children weren't just learning human technology. They were improving it, creating things that neither species could have made alone. In the main education center, Lisa Park was conducting one of her advanced language classes. But now the teaching went both ways. Human children who had arrived with the new colonists were learning the alien language, while alien children helped teach them. "Today we're going to practice the harmony singing," Lisa announced to her mixed class of human and alien children. "Remember, this isn't just about making beautiful sounds. For our alien friends, harmony singing is how their people use to make important decisions together." A human girl named Emma, about 10 years old, raised her hand. "Miss Park, why is it called harmony singing?" Before Lisa could answer, Kiara spoke up. Now nearly adult size, Kiara had become the unofficial leader among the alien children. Her blue-green feathers had developed intricate patterns that marked her as someone special among her people. "Because," Kiara explained in her musical voice, "when we sing together, we share our thoughts and feelings. If the harmony is good, it means we all understand each other. If the harmony is broken, It means someone disagrees or is unhappy. Emma nodded seriously. So it's like voting, but with music. Exactly, Kiara smiled. But better than human voting. Because you can't hide your true feelings in the harmony. The song knows if you're lying. Lisa watched this exchange with wonder. The alien children had retained their own culture and traditions, but they were also adapting them to work with human society. They were becoming something new, a bridge between two worlds. In the engineering section, Ben Torres was working with a team that included both humans and aliens on a project that would have seemed impossible a year ago. They were designing new ships that combine human space technology with alien biological engineering. The problem with human ships, explained Zephyr, now Ben's equal partner rather than his student, is that they fight against space instead of flowing with it. Our people understood that living things can adapt better than machines. Ben nodded, studying the plans they had developed together. So instead of just metal and circuits, we grow parts of the ship like a living tree, but one that can survive in space. Yes, and the ship becomes part of the crew, not just a tool they use. It can feel danger and react faster than any computer. This kind of collaboration was happening all over the colony. Human doctors worked with alien healers who understood how to use the planet's plants as medicine. Human farmers learned from alien techniques that could make the giant trees produce more food. Human teachers shared knowledge with alien wisdom keepers who had memorized thousands of years of their people's history. But perhaps the most remarkable change was in the children themselves. Jake discovered this during one of his evening walks through the Tree City. He found a group of the older alien children gathered in what had once been a meeting chamber for adults. They were having some kind of discussion, but it wasn't like any human meeting Jake had ever seen. The children were using their harmony, singing, but it was more complex than anything he had heard before. Different voices wove in and out of the melody, each adding their own thoughts to the musical conversation. What are they discussing? Jake asked Amy, who had also stopped to listen. I'm not sure, but I think they're trying to solve problems for the whole colony. Watch this. Amy approached the group and in the alien language asked about their discussion. The harmony paused, and Kiara turned to address the humans. We are singing about the future, she explained. We have been listening to human communications with Earth. We understand that some humans are afraid of us, that they think we might be dangerous. Jake felt a chill. It was true that not everyone on Earth was happy about humanity's decision to adopt an alien species. Some politicians and military leaders worried about the risks of sharing human technology with unknown beings. We want to help, continued Echo, the yellow-feathered child who had shown such talent for mimicking voices. We have been learning about Earth's problems from your databases and communications. Your people struggle with diseases, with damaged environments, with conflicts between different groups. What are you suggesting? Amy asked. The alien children looked at each other, and then Kiara spoke again. We want to send a message to Earth. We want to show your people that we are not just refugees you rescued. We are partners who can help solve problems. What kind of help? Jake asked. Melody, the purple-tinted child who had been sick when they first arrived, stepped forward. I have been working with your medical databases. Our people's biology might hold keys to curing some human diseases. And Zephyr's technology could help heal Earth's damaged environment. Storm here, she gestured to a child with dark gray feathers, has been studying human conflicts. Our harmony singing techniques might help your people find better ways to solve disagreements without fighting. Jake stared at the group of young aliens. A year ago, they had been helpless children calling for rescue across the darkness of space. Now they were offering to help solve humanity's greatest challenges. Why? He asked. Why do you want to help Earth when you've never even seen it? Kiara's large eyes met his, and when she spoke, her voice carried the wisdom of someone much older. Because you came when we called for help. You saved us when we were dying. You made us part of your family, even though we were strangers. She paused, and the other children joined their voices with hers in a soft harmony that filled the chamber with beautiful sound. Now Earth is calling for help, even if humans don't realize it yet. And we are no longer strangers. We are your children. And you are our family. When family needs help, you answer the call. Jake felt tears in his eyes as he listened to the children's words and their music. They were right. Earth was struggling with problems that seemed impossible to solve. Wars, diseases, environmental damage, and social conflicts that had plagued humanity for generations. But maybe, just maybe, the answer wasn't in human solutions alone. Maybe it lay in the wisdom and abilities of children who had learned to blend. The best of two worlds, who understood both human determination and alien harmony. Admiral Henderson needs to hear this, Jake said. All of Earth needs to hear this. The children's harmony grew stronger, more complex, as they sang about hope and family and the future they wanted to build together. It was a song that spoke of two species becoming one people, of children who had been saved becoming the saviors of their adoptive world. Tomorrow, Jake would send their message to Earth, and perhaps, for the first time in human history, the answer to humanity's problems would come not from human ingenuity alone, but from the voices of alien children who had learned what it meant to be part of something larger than themselves. 5 years had passed since Captain Jake Morrison first heard the alien children's call for help across the darkness of space. Now, Admiral Morrison stood in the Grand Assembly Hall of New Harmony, the first city built jointly by humans and the Valari people. The name had been chosen by the children themselves, reflecting their hope for a future where two species could live and work together. As one family, the hall was filled with representatives from across human space and delegations from 3 other alien species who had made contact with humanity after hearing about the Valari rescue. But Morrison's attention was focused on the stage where Kiara, now a fully grown adult, was preparing to address the gathered beings. Kiara had grown into a beautiful and wise leader. Her blue-green feathers now showed the intricate patterns that marked her as a song speaker for her people, the highest honor among the Valari. But she was also something new, something that had never existed before, a bridge between worlds. Friends. From Earth, friends from the star nations, family of my heart, Kiara began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall without any artificial amplification. The Valari had developed their voices over millions of years to carry across vast tree cities, and Kiara's voice was particularly beautiful. 5 years ago, my people were dying. Our children cried out to the empty sky, hoping someone, somewhere, might hear us and care enough to help. You answered that call. Morrison looked around the hall and saw tears in many eyes. Everyone knew the story, but hearing it from Kiara herself made it feel immediate and real. But this gathering is not about the past, Kiara continued. It is about the future we have built together and the future we can still create. On the great screens around the hall, images appeared showing the remarkable achievements of the past 5 years. Cities on Earth where Valari healers worked alongside human doctors, using their knowledge of biological harmony to cure diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. Space stations designed with Valari bioengineering that could grow and adapt like living things. Conflict zones on human worlds where Valari harmony singers had helped warring groups find peaceful solutions. When humans first found us, Kiara said, we were helpless children who knew only our own small world. You gave us knowledge of the universe, taught us about technology and science and the great community of thinking beings that fills the galaxy. The images changed to show Valari children and human children learning together in schools across dozens of worlds. Young Valari had become some of humanity's most gifted engineers, while human children learned the patience and wisdom of Valari culture. But we gave you something too. We gave you harmony. Morrison smiled, remembering the early days when his crew had struggled to care for over 100 frightened alien children. They had all learned so much since then, not just about alien biology and culture, but about themselves. In the audience, Morrison could see many of his original crew. Nicole Adams was now Director of Interspecies Security, working to protect vulnerable alien populations across human space. Ben Torres had become the galaxy's leading expert in biomechanical engineering, working with Vilari partners to design ships that were part machine, part living organism. Dr. Amy Collins sat with a group of Vilari healers who had become her closest friends and colleagues. Together, they had developed medical techniques that combined human technology with Vilari understanding of biological harmony. Diseases that had once been incurable were now treated routinely in hospitals across human space. Lisa Park had perhaps changed the most. She now served as the Chief Communication Officer for the Interspecies Council, helping newly discovered alien races communicate with the growing galactic community. The translation technique she had developed with the Vilari children had become the standard for first contact situations. Today, Kiara continued, we face a new call for help. The Zephyrians, our newest friends, have discovered a world where another species is in danger. Like my people were 5 years ago, they are dying from a plague, and their children are alone and afraid. The hall grew quiet as everyone understood what Kiara was suggesting. The screen showed images of a distant world where insect-like beings lay dead in vast underground cities, while their larvae struggled to survive without adult care. The humans of 5 years ago could have ignored our call. It would have been easier, safer, less expensive. No one would have blamed them for continuing their mission and leaving us to die. Kiara paused, her large eyes scanning the assembled delegates. But they chose differently. They chose to answer our call, even though we were strangers, even though helping us would cost them greatly. Morrison felt a warmth in his chest as he remembered that long ago day when his crew had voted unanimously to investigate the alien distress signal. Now we all face the same choice. The Zephyrian larvae are calling across space, just as we once did. We can ignore them, continue with our comfortable lives, pretend we never heard their cries. Or we can answer. The hall erupted in discussion. As delegates from different species and worlds began debating the proposal, Morrison could hear fragments of conversation in dozens of languages, both human and alien. But then something beautiful happened. A small voice rose above the noise. It was Echo, now a young adult, beginning one of the traditional Vilari songs of decision. Her voice was joined by other Vilari in the hall, and then by humans who had learned the melodies over the years. Harmony singing spread through the hall as more voices joined in. It wasn't just Vilari and humans now, but representatives from the Crystalline Collective, the Aquatic Confederation, and the Machine Consciousness Network. Each species added their own version of the melody, creating something more complex and beautiful than any single species could produce alone. Morrison had heard Harmony singing many times over the years, but this was different. This wasn't just the music of one species making a decision together. This was the voice of an entire galactic community choosing who they wanted to be. When the song ended, the decision was clear. The harmony had been perfect, unbroken. Every voice in the hall had joined together, expressing the same feeling. They would answer the call. Admiral Grace Henderson, now Director of Interspecies Operations, stood up from her seat. The motion is carried unanimously. We will mount a rescue mission to the Zephyrian world immediately. As delegates began discussing the practical details of the rescue mission, Morrison felt a small hand slip into his own. He looked down to see a young Vilari child, barely past the nestling stage. Her name was Hope, and she was one of the first generation of Vilari born after the plague, raised by humans and Vilari together. Jake grandfather, Hope said in her sweet musical voice, will you tell me the story again? About how the humans came when we called. Morrison knelt down to Hope's level, just as he had once knelt before Kiara in that long-ago Tree City. Which part of the story do you want to hear? The beginning, Hope said seriously. When the first humans heard us calling across the dark and decided to come help. Morrison smiled and began the story that had become legend among both species. As he spoke, other children gathered around, both human and Vilari. They had all heard the story many times, but they never tired of it. Once upon a time, Morrison began, there were children alone in the darkness, calling for help. And across The vast emptiness of space, someone heard them and said, "We're coming. You won't be alone anymore." As Morrison told the familiar story, Hope began to hum softly. It was the lullaby that Kiara had composed years earlier, the one that told the story of the humans who came from the stars. Other children joined in, their voices blending in perfect harmony. The song spoke of courage and kindness, of strangers becoming family, of love that crossed the boundaries between worlds. It was a song that promised that no child would ever call for help across the darkness without someone answering as the children sang. Adults throughout the hall stopped their discussions to listen. The melody was simple but profound, speaking directly to something deep in every heart. Regardless of species, Morrison looked around the hall at the amazing community that had grown from a single act of compassion. Humans, Velari, and other alien species working together, not as conquerors or subjects, but as family. Soon, they would travel to another distant world to answer another call for help. More orphan children would need care and protection. It would be difficult and dangerous work, just as it had been 5 years ago, but Morrison was no longer afraid. They had learned that the universe was full of beings who could become family, if you were brave enough to answer when they called. They had learned that love was stronger than fear, that compassion was more powerful than conquest. Most importantly, they had learned that the greatest adventures weren't about discovering new worlds or technologies. The greatest adventures were about discovering new ways to care for each other. As the children's lullaby filled the hall, Morrison closed his eyes and listened to the sound of the future, a harmony of voices from across the galaxy, all singing the same song of hope, protection, and love. The darkness between the stars no longer seemed empty and cold. It was filled with the voices of family, calling to each other across the vast distances, promising that no one would ever be alone again.